June Graham, who is the Director of Research and Development at McBride, and who will speak about the management and the dynamics of new product in household and personal care products, which is great interest, especially for me.
Okay, so thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to the organisers for inviting me to talk to you today. First of all, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about McBride, if that's okay, because we're a very different company from a lot of the companies who've spoken today, and it will put into context a bit some of the things I say and some of the things I think. So this is McBride at a glance. McBride is one of the leading suppliers of private label and store brand products in the UK, in Europe, and growingly so in Asia. Our turnover is about £680 million. We produce products in over 10 countries, 14 factories throughout the world, and we produce about 5,000 different SKUs, and we turn them over every other year. So we do a lot of stuff, and we buy a lot of stuff. In terms of our product areas, they cover household and personal care. So we make anything from skin creams right through to washing powders. So what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is a bit about MPD, a funnel for growth, a tiny bit about process and stage gates. We've heard a lot about stage gates, but I'm really going to talk a bit more about the culture of how you operate them rather than lots of different processes. Talk a little bit about collaborations and then just summarise. So I thought MPD, a funnel for growth, and managing your MPD and the portfolio of your MPD is critical to any company's growth. And so often we get ourselves pushed into positions where we're developing perhaps not quite the right product, not developing to the speed that we want to, and then disappointing our shareholders and our stakeholders. So managing MPD is a really, really tricky process, and we've been talking about how we do it for the past 20 years, and I'm sure we'll go on as groups talking about it for the next 20 years. But I thought I'd start by showing you some of my family photos, and she's lovely, isn't she? But it's going to be a really different world that she grows up into. So we've heard about water shortage, urbanisation, but we've got the whole trends that we'll see in technology. Within 10 years, probably even shorter, we'll see all of our homes and the devices in our homes interconnected. And the products that we develop and the chemicals you guys sell, which go into those products, will change completely. They will have to. We'll see in our kitchens devices where the ingredients are automatically dosed. They're controlled. You might not even need some of those ingredients for cleaning. We'll have automatic reordering just by pressing a button in your kitchen, and you can automatically order a replacement of those products. I'm sure that we'll see shopping in this whole augmented reality, not just for our children to be playing Pokemon Go, but we'll see a completely different way of buying products and how we interact with them. Wearable technology, wearable technology, not just Apple Watches or Fitbands, but we'll see technology built into our clothes. One of our speakers spoke about Nike earlier and shoes. But how are we going to design washing products to clean and care for fabrics with wearable technology? And as we start to see the way our houses are cleaned or changed, you would have seen cleaning bots, floor cleaning bots I can buy now, window cleaning bots. These do not need chemicals. You can clean with just water and energy alone. And it's really going to change what we develop and how we put those into the market. And even the way our products are delivered will be different. And as we see drone technology delivering our products to our homes, and I just wonder for the legislators among us, what sort of transport regulations does drone transport come into? But we will see products delivered very differently, and that will have an effect on the packaging as well. But whatever we do and however we see the future, for me, MPD and your portfolio management needs to be very firmly linked to your company strategy. So whether you are product leaders, developing disruptive or brand leading innovation in the market, or you're fast followers, taking the second mover advantage, it does not matter. Whatever your MPD is or your portfolio is, it needs to be strongly linked to your strategy. And there's lots of work about how do you balance your portfolio, and I've heard that over the last 2 days from some of you. And this is just some work from Nagy and Taff in 2012 talking about the importance of any company needs to ensure they balance their portfolio of MPD. So you've identified what your transformational MPD is, and this is the area where you'll be looking for groundbreaking, disruptive, changing the products, changing the way things are doing. And then also your core, which is more about improving and developing your current products with all your same technologies and adjacent. And I've heard that described in various different ways. And there is not a golden ratio for how that is. Each company will operate that very differently, and we'll all have our own balance of portfolio. For my own company, we sit firmly down in this area here with quite a small amount of transformational, but it is important to us. But if I'm a high-tech company, I can see I'm going to be much more up here. And I thought about some core and some incremental. I love this product here. This is toothbrush impregnated with menthol flavour. So you develop your mouthwash and some of your benefits impregnated into your toothbrush. But actually, if you think about some of the more disruptive technologies, what about no chemical washing? So detergent balls here, which claim to need no chemicals, no perfume. A real change for the industry in which I and my company operate. And I guess for you as well, guys, where you're trying to sell some of those chemicals. Markets are very different though, and whatever you're developing, the relevance, and this is a big consideration to us, the relevance to the market and the challenges to a European or global business. So I just look here, for instance, at appliances. So in terms of dishwashers, the number of consumers and households who have dishwashers in the UK, 42% compared to 74% in Germany. So Mintel tells me. And that means it's very different in terms of the types of products that we deploy in those markets and the expectations of consumers as well. Consumer behaviour differs very considerably in different markets as well. So 37% of Spanish consumers allegedly will pay more for antibacterial claims than French consumers. So that puts some real dilemmas to a company such as ours, considering how do we approach BPR? How do we develop products over each of those markets? But you know who judges performance is very important as well. So in some markets, magazines such as Stift and Varen are so critical, it matters more your rating there than it might be how the consumer might rate in store. In their home. So your relevance to the market is pretty key, and I've heard a lot about that as well over the last couple of days. I've talked a bit about the future, but I thought I'd just look at the laundry market. If I think about laundry liquids, which we'd use in washing machines, in 2006, it's a bit of a boring bottle, but this was the standard format for laundry liquids. Each dose was about 125 ml. By 2012, that market had started to move, and we were moving to water-soluble capsules, so capsules with a PVOH film which dissolves in the washing machine. The dose is 25 ml, significant change over 10 years, and that's driven by compaction and consumers' desires to have smaller dose products, but also about technology and the chemicals which we use. But I guess where will we be going to in 2026? Will we see chemicalless cleaning? If I look at the coffee market and I start to see the development of pods, lock and key devices where a particular mechanism fits only into one machine, there'll be some more significant changes. And our portfolio and what we do needs to be making consideration of how we see that market moving forward. And laundry is a particularly interesting area because the products that people in this market develop fit in an appliance. We're developing products to go in appliance to sell on to the consumer. So it's very different. Lots of talk on responsibility and sustainability, and of course we build that, and everyone has to build that into some degree into their markets. If I think about the UN sustainability goals, our industry can contribute positively, I'd suggest, to at least 10 of those areas. And we know that water and waste will become more important. Our product areas and how we consider develop has to be about using less resource, creating less waste. Where we're developing products which are fitting into appliances, we know appliance manufacturers are focused on cycle times, reducing cycle times, lower temperatures, less water, and all of that affects how we have to develop the products going forward. And last but not least, responsibly sourced. And it's not just about sustainable agriculture, although that's pretty key. It's also about human rights, which are taking increasing importance, and the social aspects of that through the whole of the supply chain. So processes and stage gates. Well, here is just a standard 5-stage gate process. We've heard quite a bit about this over the last 2 days, and each of the stages divides into a series of activities. But I'd suggest that does every product need to go through this process in quite the same way? There needs to be some degree of flexibility, and we operate 2-stage gates where we have a express speed process where we miss out some of those steps, and then a full stage gate. However you do it though, it really needs to link to what your business strategy is and how you want to develop and how you want to track. But it's not just about stage gates for me and the process which is important. Some of this is about culture and how the culture of the business thinks about MPD. So I'm going to quote Einstein here. If I was given an hour to save the planet, I'd spend 59 minutes defining the problem and only a minute solving it. And I guess for me, that's really important when we're looking at our product development portfolio. How many times do we start a development where we're not really clear on what the definition of the problem is? What is the problem we're trying to solve? And once we're really clear on what that problem is, I think you can then start to define how you go forward on it. And I know myself, I'm ashamed to admit this, many a time I've spent a minute thinking about the problem and then the next 59 minutes trying to solve it, but it was the wrong problem I was solving. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of us if we're really honest with ourselves. And just something simple like that for me will change how you develop much more than just processes. For me, R&D is a series of reiterative steps. You do an experiment, you get a result, and it changes how you go forward and what the next stage is. I don't mind having a plan B. I'm perfectly okay with that. The goal doesn't change, but how you might get there will do. And it's about this series of experiments, how you take that forward. And I think that's another area which is just an interesting concept I'd leave you with. So the goal does not change, but the actual steps might. I don't know how many times you get told, but the number of times I get told, you must start the project earlier. If you start earlier, you will finish the project earlier. And for me, it's not about that. What that happens to me is we just end up with a big traffic jam. I think speed for us is all about where can you try and converge projects. So you take individual projects, try and converge them into bigger ones. And have a really clear plan when you start. Because starting everything at the same time, just for me, just gives a jumbled mess where we dilute resource. So convergence for speed and plan when we plan to start a project. It seems to me that so many project managers and product development teams seem to just love adding features. And the more features we will add, there's a perception the consumer will love the product even more. And there isn't really an appreciation that adding all these, I'm sure some of my marketing colleagues will kill me if they could hear me talking now, but there isn't an appreciation that adding more features slows down, can add complexity, and actually drives cost up. Features are important, but I think it's almost as important to understand the features you don't want to add, as well as the features which really are adding value to the consumer. So I'd give simplification versus feature creep. In R&D as well, there's always a thing about, we must get it right first time. Right first time is the most important part, and I'd suggest that takes you on this risk and reward balance. It's really easy to actually be quite risk averse. What that might do is give you right first time. It will really drive your rewards and what your benefits of any project are down. So I think there's a real balance to be had here. So I'll talk a little bit about collaborations. In terms of my own business, we've identified what our value strategy is, and our value strategy is about operational excellence. And for us, what that means is about simplification, about being cost leaders, about offering a standard service and added value where we're very clear what value the customer will pay for and what additional services the customer will pay for. So it's about having a very disciplined approach and a very process-focused approach as well as a business. And all of that really defines how we work in collaboration, both with our suppliers, with universities and with our customers as well. So the basics, and I guess that goes without saying, and that's all about price, standards, consistency, looking at the total cost, service and conformance to standard. And we've also got a really strong approach now on simplification, and last year we took down the number of materials we buy in our business by 20%, and that was by standardising what we buy today and looking to see where we can combine things together. So that's really important for us, but we have to do that recognising that we still need to make the space to bring new and exciting materials into the business. For us, how we manage prices, raw material fluctuations is a real challenge. And for us, we now design our products in what we call design windows. And those design windows give us flexibility to how we manage that product in the market going forward. So it's important that when we're working in collaboration, we're able to work within those design windows with our suppliers. And there's an understanding on that. I've talked briefly about responsible sourcing and clearly as we're developing products, we have some really clear requirements which we have with our suppliers on how we source materials and what our standard and our processes are there. But for me, one of the most important things when we're working in collaboration is about having very agreed expectations, a very clear brief, and both parties are clear about what the expectation is, what the outcome is going to be. And there's something for both parties in it. Clearly, whatever we're doing needs to have real relevance to the consumer, relevance to the market and the end consumer who we're selling that product to. And landscaping, we work best with collaborators where we've both got an understanding of where the landscape is, what the landscape is of the technologies in the current market and some adjacent markets. Some of the best things we've done in my company is where we've taken some food technologies and some ideas from food market into personal care. And driving value. Any innovation, an MPD has to drive value and growth for the company, otherwise it's not sustainable and it's not an area which we would then take forward with longer life. So, if I summarise, first of all, any NPD, any development, any innovation needs to be a very clear link to the business strategy. We really need to understand the need. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And how does that link to the consumer who we're ultimately serving? Flexibility in process to allow us to take account of some changes along the way, how we might want to adapt our plans. And last but not least, work with the right suppliers, work with the partners who work best with your business and your culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. It's now open for discussion. Do you have some question? If no first question from the audience, I have one on understand the need. You spent 99% of your time defining the problem, but is understanding the need a push from consumer expectations, consumer needs, or it's something you want to define as a next step to provide an unexpected innovation?
That's a really interesting question, because I think if you're going into where you're going to disruptive, sometimes you're changing the consumer need. And I accept that where you are creating that, the consumer might not even know that at the moment. But in the majority of the work, and it depends which area of the NPD portfolio you're on, you really need to understand the problem that you are solving. And even if you're creating you want to create a need in the consumer to do things in a different way, you still need to know the problem that you're going to solve.
Okay.
As you're active in the private label area, let's say, what's your freedom for innovation? Because I can suppose, of course, there's the end customer, but of course you probably have a lot of pressure or restrictions or specific demands from your direct clients.
Yeah, you're right. So it's a really difficult balance in terms of that push-pull. Yeah. So our clients, our primary business is private label, and our clients will want to push some things onto us. That's a challenge because there's a speed thing there as well. When you're trying to do MPD, it will take you time, whether it's groundbreaking or just core. So our job and what we have to do to try and differentiate ourselves is anticipate where those changes are going to be. So we've started to do that development before our customer asks. So we've got to start looking at further where the future is. And there's some reason, and there are a few reasons to do that. One, I said to you, our business, our value discipline is about operational excellence. That's about simplicity. It's about control. You can only do that if you can start to control your destiny and control what technologies you're going to take forward. And secondly, it's about you can then combine and bundle things together to reduce cost and increase speed.
Another question here.
Great presentation. And we are a related industry because we are also into contract manufacturing in India. You talked about the balance between reward and risk. Yeah, now, while it's true that in R&D you do have failures, but the focus will always be, and I mean it's pretty much been what I have faced, yeah, that you have to get it right first time. Yeah, so do you have a different point of view on this?
Personally, yeah, I do. Personally, I do. But corporately, organisations always want to drive right first time. I think we have to give freedom to our researchers to be able to experiment. And the more you take that away, the less innovative or great ideas that you get to take forward. So for me personally, I see that as that's partly my job to manage that and manage that freedom. Some companies, we heard 3M have a quite different approach. That's not where our company is. That you'd see that much more with a product leading company. Yeah.